Hi, I'm Erica Marks, Youth Programming Manager at the Cleveland Public Library. It's Summer Lit League, Week 1, and today is Write to Read Wednesday. Our prompt for this week is, what if I was a book character? Well, we have a special guest today who is going to help us write our very own fictional book character. Ohio author Shelley Pearsall, who is a former teacher and author of several acclaimed books for teens and middle grade readers, has a workshop for us. She's going to show us how to create a book character inspired by a shoe. All right, so get ready. Get your pencils, your ink pens, your paper, and let's jump into this activity. We hope you can join us tomorrow also for Thoughtful Thursday. Have fun!
Hi everyone, I'm Shelley Pearsall. I'm an author with Random House and Little Brown Books. I write novels for 4th to 8th graders. And you know, one of the questions I've asked most often is, where do I find the inspiration for the characters that I write about? Well, today I thought I'd show you one of my favorite sources of inspiration, and we're going to be creating a character and trying to find our own story idea. And one of my favorite sources of inspiration is shoes. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking that maybe you don't have the best imagination, maybe you've never created a story before, maybe you think you're not a very good writer. Trust me, anyone can create a character from a shoe and find a wonderful story as well. So find yourself some paper and a pen or pencil, and we'll get started. So I believe that anyone can create a character from a shoe, and of course we all have shoes around our house. Some of these shoes came from my own house, and some have come from resale shops and Goodwill. But I've collected a whole basket of shoes that I think would make some great characters. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hold up a few shoes, and you're going to choose the shoe that you think will make the best character for you, and then I'm going to choose one as well from the basket here. So I'm going to hold up a couple of examples, really look at each shoe and decide which one really speaks to you. So here's choice number 1. A very imaginative shoe. Here's your next choice, a fuzzy purple slipper. Who do you see wearing this shoe? All right, here's choice number 3. This great sock monkey slipper. Think about who might wear this, what they look like. How about rainbow boot? Cute little rainbow boot. And the last choice, black sneaker. So let me hold them all up again. We have the green, shiny metallic shoe, very pointy. We have the purple slipper. We have sock monkey. We have rainbow boot and black sneaker. So which one really inspires you? For which one can you really picture the character? So I looked through the shoe collection and I've made my choice. I'm going to be creating a character from this shoe. And when I first saw this shoe, the name that popped into my head, the name of the person that I thought would wear this shoe, his name was Steve. So for me, this shoe has always been Steve. So I can tell all of you are wondering, why did I pick the name Steve to go with this shoe? Well, this is a man's shoe. It's something that a middle-aged man would wear. Sometimes people think because of the tassels and the decoration that this is a woman's shoe. It's actually not. It's a shoe that a man would wear with a suit or with a nice sport coat. And when I first saw this shoe, I thought, somebody named Steve, I think, wears this shoe. So every shoe has some names that seem to fit that shoe. And I'll show you an example. For instance, if I showed you this shoe, what name pops into your head? Now for me, when I look at this shoe, I think Alexander William Joseph III, because it's a very formal, very nice looking shoe. Let's see. This one has always been Candace. I don't know why, but this looks like a Candace to me. And how about this one? This is a little tougher. My husband Mike's the cameraman right now. Mike, what are you thinking of for this shoe?
That's Isabella.
Isabella. That's a good name. So Isabella. This could be Isabella. And one more. How about this one? To me, this is always Sam. This looks like a Sam, and I can even picture her kind of long, blondish hair, and she has braces. So to me, this shoe has always been Sam. So think about the shoe that you chose, and think what name might fit the person that would wear that shoe. If you're having trouble thinking of a name, I'm going to put a list of names up on the screen, and you can pause on that list and look through the list and look at your shoe and try to decide which name fits best. So get ready to pause, and we'll see you on the other side of the names. Okay, hopefully by now you have a name for your character, and so it's time to start creating that character. We're going to be creating realistic characters today, so we're not creating characters who have, you know, one purple eye and one green eye and horns and drool and all of that. Our characters are going to be real people who could walk into an office building or into a school or go to a stadium and look like other people at that stadium. So real characters who live in today's world. So what we need to do next, now that you have the name of the character, is to start coming up with what that character is going to look like, what their age is. And so to start that process, I'd like you to take the sheet of paper and that you have with you and a pencil, and you can put a circle in the middle of your piece of paper, and it should be a small circle. So something like this, not something like that. So small circle in the middle of your paper. All right, I'm going to do that up here on the board. And inside that circle, you're going to write the name of your character. And so my character's name, as you know, is Steve. So Steve is, his name goes in the middle of the circle. And then we're going to come up with an age for the character. So Steve is a middle-aged person. Like I said, this is a middle-aged man's shoe. Depending on the shoe you pick, the age is going to be different. So if you chose the rainbow boot, this is a little kid's shoe. So you're going to need to pick a little kid's age. This shoe could be worn by someone from the age of 16 all the way up to the age of, I don't know, 60, I guess. So some of the shoes, you have some choices. Some are definitely kids' shoes. So what we're going to do next is put an age with our brainstorm. So I think Steve, since he's middle-aged, is going to be, let's see, I'm going to make him 48 years old. So I'm going to put the number 48 right there. So take a minute, think about the age of the character who wears the shoe that you chose. And again, we're creating realistic characters, so they're not going to be 250 years old. They're not going to be 1-year-old. So pick an age that's realistic to that shoe. And if you need a little more time to think about that, just pause on the sloth picture that's coming next. Okay, so now we need to describe what our characters look like. And for this, I'm going to be writing ideas for what I think Steve looks like up here on the board. And then we're going to pause, and then you're going to have the time to put down appearance details for your character. But we're going to start out with Steve, and he's 48 years old. And I think when I picture Steve, I'm imagining that at 48, he's starting to go a little bit bald on the top. So I'm going to say he's balding. But the rest of his hair is brown. Let's say light brown. I'm picturing Steve with a little scar right here on his chin, and I think that he might have gotten that scar from something in childhood. I'm going to say a skateboarding accident. So he has a little scar on his chin. from a skateboarding accident. When you're coming up with details for your characters, you want to be as specific as possible, because remember, there's a lot of 48-year-olds walking around, and we need to be able to recognize your character. I want to be able to recognize Steve. So something really specific, like a small scar on his chin, is something that would set him apart from other 48-year-olds. Let's see, what else? I picture Steve wearing glasses, although not all the time. So I'm going to say he has bifocals, so glasses that he can wear when reading. So we're going to call them reading glasses. And I'm going to say that they are have brown frames. Let's see. I don't think Steve is really in shape. I picture him being a little bit out of shape, maybe a little bit pudgy. Don't tell Steve. Let's see, what else? You know, I think Steve is somebody who has a kind of a soft-spoken voice. So he's not a loud, boisterous person. He's a little bit more shy. So I'm going to say soft-spoken. He's more of a listener, I think. Let's see, what else? I think he's medium height, so he's not really tall, he's not short. So he's kind of in the middle, medium height. Mike, do you have any other ideas for Steve?
What does he dress like?
I think jeans with button-down shirts. And he likes to wear a ball cap. Buttoned down shirts. And maybe he sometimes wears a ball cap with, let's see, the Cleveland Indians on it. All right, look at all those appearance details. So those are very specific. We could definitely find Steve in a big crowd if we looked for a man who's balding slightly, with brown hair, kind of out of shape. He's got a scar on his chin from a skateboarding accident. Sometimes he's wearing his reading glasses. He likes to wear his Cleveland Indians ball cap, and he's got button-down shirts, and jeans is what he likes to wear most often. And he's medium height, kind of a soft-spoken guy. So those are all appearance details. To help you think about your character's appearance, on the next slide you're going to see a whole bunch of details to think about. Is your character somebody who wears glasses? Do they have braces? Do they have a tattoo? Do they wear jewelry or makeup? How is their hair styled? So on the next slide, it'll give you some of those ideas to think about. And on your own page, you're going to be doing a brainstorm just like this, only with appearance. So just add your appearance details now to your brainstorm, and then after that, we'll move on to what your character's personality is like. Okay, now it's time to give our characters some personality. And I can tell some things about Steve's personality just from looking at this shoe. For instance, I noticed that it's very worn out on the bottom, which tells me that Steve is somebody who really wears his shoes for a long time, meaning that he's not going to the store and buying new shoes every week, unlike this guy who probably has 2 closets full of shoes. So I'm going to say that Steve is very careful with his money, or another word for that might be thrifty. So for personality, I'm going to add the word thrifty to my brainstorm for Steve. So thrifty. I also, when I look at this shoe, I see somebody that's not very creative. He's more of a logical person. He's a give me the facts kind of person. So I'm going to say Steve is logical. Unlike, let's see, this person is very creative. So Steve's logical. The person who wears this shoe is creative. Talkative. Like I said, Steve's kind of a soft-spoken guy, but I definitely see the person who wears this shoe as very talkative. Can you see that? And this one is also a very talkative shoe. You can never shut her up. So what I'm going to put on the board, on the screen next, is a list of personality details. And you can pause on that screen and pick out some personality details that fit your character and add those to the brainstorm, just like we're doing here with Steve. Okay, so hopefully you found some personality details for your character. Whenever I create characters, I start with surface details. So we started with appearance, and then we learned a little bit more about our characters, so we're getting a little deeper into who your character is. And now we're going to try to discover some things about your character's life, and their interests, and their talents, and maybe some of their fears. So let's start with a little bit about their life, and maybe what their job is, or what year they are in school. So if you have chosen a shoe that is worn by an adult, you're going to be thinking about what their job is, or what job they used to do if they're retired. And if you chose a shoe that belongs to a kid or a teenager, you're going to be thinking about what year they are in school and putting that on your brainstorm. Maybe what subjects they're good at and what subjects they're not very talented at. Maybe some interests or clubs that they're part of in school. So we're thinking about their life and, again, trying to learn more about who they are. So going back to Steve, because Steve is a thrifty, logical person, he's a numbers guy, I'm thinking for his job, he should be in a job that involves numbers. So I'm going to say that he's an insurance agent. So during the day, he's an insurance agent. And if I'm being totally honest, he doesn't like being an insurance agent. So on the weekends, he gets to do some of the hobbies that he really enjoys. And one of his hobbies that he enjoys is building model airplanes. And I think he likes to build model airplanes from the past. So I'm going to say that he builds model airplanes from, let's say, World War II. So that's one of his interests. I'm going to put that up here, building model airplanes. From World War II. All right, so we have his job during the week. We have one thing he's interested in doing on the weekend. Let's see, if I look over here, we wrote that he wore a Cleveland Indians ball cap, so I think that means he's probably interested in watching baseball games or even going to baseball games. So I'm going to say watching baseball games over here. And you notice I'm really having to squeeze in my details right now, and that's okay. You know, these are not supposed to be something that we publish. This is just a brainstorm where we put our ideas, and so you can write them in whatever space you have left. If you misspell something, that's fine. The brainstorm is just for you. So he likes to watch baseball games. And let's see, we need to give him a family. I'm thinking from looking at this shoe that there's a little bit of sadness here. So I'm going to say that Steve is divorced. And I think he probably has a teenage son. So we're going to say he has a 17-year-old son named Mike. Can you help me out? What should a son be named?
Peter.
Peter. And I think he has to have a pet at home. So I'm going to give him a cat. Let's see. Cat. Let's say a black and white cat named Mr. Peppers. Mr. Peppers. Let's see. We didn't give Steve a fear yet. So I'm looking at this idea with the airplanes. I think it would be interesting to give Steve a fear of flying. So even though he makes model airplanes, he's never actually been in a plane before, or at least he hasn't been on a flight that he's been comfortable riding in that plane. So I'm going to say he's afraid of flying. fear of flying. All right. One more thing. What kind of car does Steve drive? I'm going to say that he's a Honda guy. So he drives a Honda Civic. And if you listen to the music that he plays in his car, I'm going to say he likes to listen to, how about some classical music? Gosh, I am running out of space. All right, so we're going to say classical music is what he plays when he's driving around. All right, so that's a lot of ideas about Steve's life. We're starting to really picture who he is and who his family is and what job he does and what some of his interests are. So I'm going to stop here, and on the next slide you can pause and it'll give you some things to think about with your character's life, and you can add some of these details now to your brainstorm. Have fun. All right, you probably noticed that in the last set of details you added to your brainstorm about your character, you've started to think of some story possibilities with your character. And I can see that up here as well with Steve. I'm starting to see how some of these details, especially the ones in green, could connect to a story about Steve. And so the last details we're adding to our brainstorm definitely will connect your character with a story. So here's the three things that I want you to think about with your character. So these will be our final three details to add to our brainstorm. First, what is a dream that your character has? And keep it real to your character. We don't want to give them a dream like, taking over the world. We want it to be real to who they are and what their life is like. Second, let's give them a problem. So what's really bothering them? What's a real struggle in their life? Now, obviously, an adult is going to have a different set of problems than a kid. An adult might be worried about losing their job, whereas a kid might be worried about problems with friends or with how they're doing in school or with something that they're not being allowed to do in their family. So those are some problems that a kid would have versus an adult. So the third thing is we want to give our character a special object. And again, it's going to depend on the character's age. For a small child, a stuffed animal might be a favorite object, or a gift that they got from another friend. Whereas for an adult, it might be something from their past, a special family object or heirloom. So for instance, for an adult, it might be something like a compass or a pocket watch, could be a special object, or something like a photograph of someone in their family or in their life who is important to them. So let's move back to Steve and figure out, first of all, what is his dream? And I think Steve really wants to travel. As much as he's afraid of flying, he's always wanted to go to Europe and maybe see some of those historical sites that connect with some of his model building. So I'm going to say one of his dreams is to go to Europe and maybe face that fear of flying. I think he also has a dream of going to the World Series because of his interest in baseball. So I'm going to somewhere add World Series. He'd like to see the World Series in person. All right, so we need to give Steve a problem. And I think his problem is going to involve his son, Peter, because I think Peter is also interested in building airplanes. Not only that, Peter would like to take flying lessons, and he really wants his dad to support that and to go along with him later on in his flying lessons. And of course, Steve is really worried about his ability to do that. So I think his fear of flying is a problem, but also his son's interest in wanting to learn to fly. And looking at the pocket watch that I showed earlier gave me the idea that I think that Steve, his special object is a compass, maybe from his father or grandfather who was a pilot in a previous war. So I'm going to say that his special object is a compass. Now I know some of you may be wondering, could the special object have magical powers? For those of you that like to write fantasy stories, Could that object be connected to something magical, or could it have some sort of magical ability? Definitely. At this point in your character, in your story, you can add something with a magical power if that fits in with your character and your story ideas. All right, so take a minute and think about a dream, a problem, and a special object that belongs to your character, and that'll be on the next screen. Welcome back, everyone. We've now finished the brainstorming part of our writing activity, and hopefully your brainstorm looks about as crowded and full of great ideas as mine does here on the board. You remember when I told you at the beginning of the writing workshop that anyone and everyone can create characters? Well, hopefully you found that to be true, because up here we've definitely created a character, and hopefully on the page you're working on, you can also start to see a character that you've created from your own imagination. So what's amazing is we started out with just an ordinary shoe, and now we have a full-fledged character. In the case of this shoe, we have a character named Steve, who has a son named Peter. He has a cat named Mr. Peppers. He loves building model airplanes on his own time, but during the week he earns money by working as an insurance agent. He has glasses and he's balding. He's medium height and he's a big fan of the Cleveland Indians. So we got all of that just from one shoe. So hopefully, like I said, your page is just as filled with ideas as this board is. When I create characters for my books, this is exactly what I do to create each and every character, whether it's a minor character or a major character. So I just thought I'd show you some of my own brainstorms that I've created for the characters that I've written about in my books. So this is a brainstorm for a character named Levi, who is the main character in a book called Jump Into the Sky that I wrote, which is about World War II. And then here's a brainstorm for several characters in my newest book, Things Seen from Above. So after you have a brainstorm like this, you can start to search for story ideas within that brainstorm. So right away, I can see some possibilities in the brainstorm here. First of all, I love the idea of the compass. And we could take that in a couple different directions. It could go in a realistic story, but it could also go in a fantasy story, because perhaps that compass has some magical powers. I really like the idea of flying and his son wanting to fly, and Steve being afraid of flying. So I think that could be a possibility for a great story. And the other one I really like is, I think the fact that he would like to go to Europe. So maybe I could use that possibility as well in a story, again, going along with his fear of flying. So I'd like you to look at your own brainstorm, put some stars next to parts of that brainstorm where you can start to see the possibility of a story appearing. Okay, so now you have your wonderful character, you have some of your story ideas. It's time to write a 200-page book. Just kidding. We're actually going to be writing what would go on the back of a book. So I'd like you to imagine that you've already written a book about your character, or with your character as the main character, and we're going to write those descriptions that go on the back of the book, or sometimes there's a description on the inside flap that convinces readers to want to read the rest of the story. So I'll give you an example from one of my books. It's called, the book is called Things Seen from Above, and this is the blurb that goes on the back. You can never tell where a simple line may lead. Joey didn't know who the girl was or why she was sitting there during the 4th grade recess, but he had a feeling that it meant something in his life was about to change. So you can see how that blurb makes you want to find out what is going to change. What does that line lead to? So it raises questions that motivate you to want to read the story. So that's what your blurb is going to do as well. So I wrote a blurb for Steve. Actually, I wrote 2 blurbs to give you an idea of how those descriptions can really draw a reader into the story. So I took some of the ideas that I starred here and I put them into a short paragraph, again, that would go on the back of a book. Here's the first blurb. A divorced dad, which I took that from here. Steve has a lifelong fear of flying, but he's always enjoyed building model airplanes with his son, Peter. Now, Peter is a junior in high school and wants to take flying lessons. Will Steve be able to overcome his fear and support his son's dream? How will his grandfather's forgotten compass and a brush with death help Steve to discover who he really is and what really matters in his life? Find out in Above the Clouds. That's the title. So that's one example of a blurb. And then I took different ideas and wrote an entirely different blurb. So here's blurb number 2. Steve has always wanted to go to the World Series. Remember, he wanted to go to the World Series right there. What happens when he wins free tickets through his company's contest? Will he be able to overcome his fear of flying to go and see the games? Is there a way that his compass will help? Find out in Where the Compass Leads. All right, so those are 2 examples of blurbs. There's a couple of phrases that work well in a blurb that really make a blurb exciting. Things like what will happen when, find out in, what happens if. I'm going to put some of those phrases up on the screen so that you'll be able to use them in your blurbs. It also helps to often start with your character's problem. So if you notice in the first blurb that I read for Steve, I said, a divorced dad, Steve has a lifelong fear of flying. So right there, his problem is in the first sentence. In the second one, I actually used Steve's dream. Steve has always wanted to go to the World Series. So your character's problem or their dream can be a good way to start the blurb. So I'm going to let you take some time to try to create your blurbs that will lead a reader into your story. And remember, you can change words and move things around just like I did in my own blurb here. So find a second sheet of paper and your pencil and start trying to create the blurb that would go on the back of your imaginary book. I hope you've had fun creating your characters from shoes today. Like I said at the very beginning of this program, I believe everyone has an imagination, and everyone and anyone can create characters and discover stories in those characters' lives. If you've created a character in a story that you want to keep working with, please continue your stories. Find some more sheets of paper or get on your computer and keep on writing. And also remember, if you ever need a story idea or an idea for a character, we all have plenty of shoes in our houses. So find yourself a shoe and keep on writing. Thanks for joining me in this workshop, everyone. Bye-bye.